Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this techUK webinar on bridging the cloud skills gap. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Chris Hazel, and I'm techUK's Programme Manager for Cloud. I'll be moderating the discussion this morning. A couple of quick housekeeping points before we get started. This session is being recorded, so feel free to share it with interested colleagues. And if you're on the call, we will be taking Q&A, so put any questions or comments that you've got in the chat, but please do keep your cameras off and your microphones muted to avoid disruption for the panel. In the next 30 to 40 minutes, we're going to be unpacking some of the skills challenges facing organizations and some of the key considerations for businesses looking to benefit from cloud-enabled digital transformation. We often hear that people and process elements of a digital transformation are the hardest to get right, and that businesses of all sizes are facing skills shortages that are holding back growth. So how can we access the broadest possible talent base? How can we build strong and inclusive workplaces that get the best out of the technical solutions available from many of the companies that techUK is here to champion? This panel session is also part of techUK's Tech Together campaign that's shining a spotlight on diversity and inclusion and the need to foster equal opportunities in the tech sector and beyond. So please do take a moment to check out all the fantastic content on the campaign hub. The link will be in the chat if you're on the call, or down below if you're watching this as a webinar. We've got a great panel this morning and they can introduce themselves better than I can. So Charlotte, Yasmin, Cécile and Adam, perhaps you can introduce yourselves and say a little bit about your organisation and where you're approaching this conversation from. Yasmin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't mind going first, of course. So my name's Yasmin Nardo. I'm the head of Connected Technology Academy here at KPMG. So my role means that I'm responsible for our early talent, technology pathways and development. So anything kind of from work experience, apprenticeships, graduates, and just ensuring that we develop and nurture that talent within technology. As well as this, I am a board member at Wild, which is a social community initiative in Yorkshire, which focuses on encouraging more representation into technology. I'm also a board member at Yorkshire Dance, Maggie's Cancer Centres and a school governor. So I guess I'm probably approaching the conversation from a talent lens and that development and a skills gap perspective, I think.
Great, Yasmin. Charlotte?
Hi, I'm Charlotte Webb, Marketing and Operations Director here at Hyve Managed Hosting. We are a managed hosting provider looking after people's cloud workloads. For us, I think it's all about kind of bridging the gap between the people that might have the lack of talent in-house and where we can support them by managing their cloud infrastructure for them.
Thanks, Charlotte. Cécile, and then Adam.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Cécile Bonnet, and I'm Managing Director at Bright Network Technology Academy. So the focus of Technology Academy is really to build the workforce of tomorrow by focusing on our young, diverse tech talent. So we basically look at non-technical learners and provide them with the soft skills and technical skills that they need to kickstart their career in tech, as well as helping our customers by deploying and supporting these young diverse talent into their organization for 12 to 24 months and really helping address diversity and the skills gap. So my focus, similar to Yasmin, is going to be on the talent aspect of things, but also the diversity element of really thinking about cloud and how we can enhance organizations with our new wave of technologists.
Thanks, Cécile. And last but not least, Adam.
Yes, thank you very much. My name's Adam Cockburn. I'm a CIO, chief architect and digital strategist. For the last few years, I've been working with at Axiologik, where we help clients design and deliver their digital ambitions, which typically includes a large chunk of cloud capability. I'm coming this certainly from the angle of talking to clients, feeling their pain, helping them navigate their way through how they actually are going to deliver their digital ambitions and how they work with their existing workforce, how they enhance their existing workforce, but also develop their organizations into be self-sustaining digital and cloud organizations.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. So I want to start out with kind of a general setting the scene question, and perhaps from your introductions, I think Charlotte and Adam will probably be coming at this from a kind of demand side perspective and Yasmin and Cécile from a kind of supply talent side perspective. But I'm just wondering, and perhaps Charlotte, perhaps I can come to you first on this one. How do you think the skills requirements are changing, and where do you think the kind of biggest gaps are for accelerating digital transformation, whether that's cloud enabled or not, across the economy? And in organizations that come to Hyve, how big a factor do you think skills shortages are in kind of holding back the digital transformation and business growth that they're looking for?
Yeah, I think at the moment we're seeing a huge amount of kind of people coming to us saying, look, we can't get the talent. And, you know, it's a really interesting topic because cloud has kind of enabled digital transformation, but it's also holding it back because the resources suddenly, people are transforming really quickly, and, you know, things are getting more complicated. And I just think that we, as a company, we then help kind of businesses move that forward. But I think the in-house kind of, the risk is that because the talent and the workload's kind of not there, it holds people back because they might deploy things in the wrong way or not have the skills to kind of build on what's needed to digitally transform. And this ends up creating kind of cost barriers for them because it's more expensive because they've not got the kind of the expertise that they need. And that then reforms them from kind of pushing forward their digital transformation.
Thanks, Charlotte. Yasmin, I saw you nodding along there. Do you want to kind of come in and build on that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it from a skills gap perspective, really, because I think I've seen, I guess, the skills gap affect every organisation that I've worked for. And I think the problem is there's always a need for constant change and moving with that kind of agility to keep up with current trends, whatever that may be, right? So I think that the skills gap from a digital perspective has been a problem for well over 10 years. And I think one of the problems that we had when I was at Sky Betting and Gaming, when we kind of just separated from Sky, was that once we'd recruited that pool of talent, it had effectively dried up. So what do you do from there? Because not everybody has these skills and technology changes so quickly. So we moved into growing our own, which is obviously incredibly popular in terms of those early talent routes. But I think that's more of a long-term investment for businesses when a lot of businesses need the skills now. So I think obviously I'm going to say that, you know, early talent is absolutely worthwhile and they're the future of your business, but how do we address what's happening now and how do we bring people in and develop them, I guess? And it makes it very difficult when things are so fluid and changing all the time.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point there, and perhaps we can come on to talk about that a bit later in terms of the kind of time lag involved. And, you know, by the time you've set up a training initiative and you've put a whole cohort of young people through a program, you know, the technology has already moved on. So I think that's a really interesting point. Adam, I'm just wondering kind of how you see this issue in terms of the skills gaps affecting kind of your own businesses or customers and clients that you've worked with recently, and kind of where you see the kind of core challenge. Both, I'm thinking both in terms of technical skills and perhaps some of those broader business skills that are needed to benefit from a digital transformation process.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Chris, because you're right. It's not just about technical skills. I think organizations are thinking about digital and cloud and also reverse engineering them into their organizations, creating new organizations. So it's actually an accelerator. It's cloud and digital on top of the skills they already have and integrating them effectively. I guess it's important to understand where we are as an industry at large, really. And I think, you know, 94% of organizations, larger organizations, have significant cloud footprint. So this is not early days. This is, you know, the ball is well and truly rolling, and organizations are attacking it because actually there's huge new revenue to be created through cloud. What that means is actually businesses aren't thinking about how do they do what they do better today. There is huge benefit to this. What that means is those cloud skills, those digital skills, need to be across their whole organization. So what we're seeing very much is that actually there's kind of probably three key gaps. The first is being able to set the right cloud strategy and what do you invest in at the right time. That takes cloud and digital skill. that isn't always present. You really need to know about what that means for your organization. So the knowledge, the skills, the awareness across every team of how they embrace the cloud and digital. And of course, underneath all of that is the mechanical technical skills you need with cloud, so from design, which is very creative, to the engineering and the operation. And the critical part here is that lifelong learning is so important, because actually in 4 years, you'll learn it all again, because it's rapidly evolving.
Thanks, Adam. That's some great points. Cécile, does that kind of resonate with your experience from the skills side?
Absolutely, Adam. I think what Adam said is really key. It's kind of creating that, what's the skill landscape in your organization, right? And also, where do you put the priorities? Because we hear from customers with whom we work, like they have feature teams that are stretched with multiple workloads, and they have priorities. They want the senior people in the business to be able to deliver on these priorities, and they know they need junior talent, but they have it's just not aligned. So that idea of like the fact that it will have to be put at the core of what a business does in order to kind of drive that digital transformation, I think is going to be key. And then there's the other piece around the fact that our education system is doing what it can, but universities are just limited into how much they can actually kind of address the demand. It's quite theoretical compared to what's actually needed in the businesses. So we have to think about non-traditional pathways really to get people into tech, and that whole idea of what are actually the potential you need to bring in your business rather than maybe the core skills. Because to your point, Adam, the lifelong learning, the element of curiosity and being able to deal with change and ambiguity is really what's going to boost an organization, in my mind.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because I think there's so much, I guess, focus on degree discipline or grades and qualifications. And I guess there are a lot of pools of untapped talent, and I think it's important to ensure that we're taking those measures to remove those barriers to entry. And I hear it quite a lot, and I've always really been, I guess, focused on attitude, not aptitude, because I think in terms of that lifelong learning, and you can teach anybody anything if they want to learn it. I think having those problem solving skills, those curiosity, creativity is really important when you're coming into, I guess, a technical role. And I'm not grades and qualifications are of course important, but it shouldn't be the sole focus of hiring someone into a tech career, not somebody new anyway. And I think that by implementing the correct training and development pathways for people, this confirms your investment up front and their commitment to you on the flip side as well. So I think in terms of that pool of untapped talent, I don't just think it's an early talent thing. I think if we, I guess, consider things like more fluidity and flexibility on hours, that would open opportunities to different pools of talent, such as returners to work and job sharing. So we've tried a few things here at KPMG in terms of making sure we get that diversity of talent. I do believe that, I think we've worked with Bright Network for some of our early talent stuff, and then also people like North Coders, Code First Girls, who focus on female talent, Black Code Her Generation, who focus on training and retraining talent from less socially mobile backgrounds. So you've got that real mix in there of people who might be career changers, but they've got that kind of life experience, or somebody who wants to return to work but is being met with, I guess, resistance for whatever. I just think that there's probably so much that we could be missing out on.
Thanks, Yasmin. I think that's a really good point, and you've bridged us. You've taken us on nicely to the next bit of the session. So we've set the scene. There's a big skills gap problem. Organizations are held back. How do we bridge that gap? So I guess my question, and broadly speaking, is how do we access the broadest possible talent base? How do we make sure that organizations are drawing from the kind of biggest and best pool that they can? And I want to start with, particularly since this is part of the Tech Together campaign, what role you think kind of diverse and inclusive recruitment has in filling these gaps. I think there was a trend for many years of people looking at diverse and inclusive recruitment from a sort of ethical, social responsibility perspective, but there's many hard business reasons to have the broadest possible talent base to recruit from. So perhaps, Charlotte, can I come to you first on this? Because I'm interested in, you're working in the infrastructure space in a kind of very technical field. So I'm just wondering how you've kind of seen the diversity and inclusion picture change over the years while you've been in the industry, and whether you think it is enough of a priority now for the kind of customers that are coming to you and the organizations you're working with.
Yeah, I think it's an ever evolving kind of beast, and kind of inclusiveness and diversity goes so much further than kind of what's put in place. I mean, I'm here representing women in tech, and that's something that's hugely kind of missing within the kind of industry and skills. And I think there's a lot kind of where it's seen as very much a male dominated industry, and kind of women should stay away. But in terms of the talent pool, we make sure that we kind of work with universities to get people straight out of there so they can kind of learn on the job and in real life, because I think that then creates interest. And there's a lot that's said on kind of STEM subjects being really important, but actually what we're seeing is that I don't think it's being promoted enough, because you can talk around it, but we're not seeing that people come through that are actually have studied STEM and STEM subjects, and that it's not really being promoted in that way. I mean, us as a business, we ensure that anyone that comes in, that they have the opportunity to kind of upskill in the workplace, but also kind of do their into kind of house changes where they can actually go and sit in the tech team. Our tech team sit in the center of our office, and we make sure that every different department can go and get involved with them and learn, to try and kind of create that kind of demand and interest, and show how important it is within the business that we're in.
Yeah, I think those in-work placement opportunities are really important. Cécile, perhaps can I bring you in to build on this question around diversity and inclusion, and how it kind of factors into the work that you do?
Absolutely. So totally echo what Charlotte was saying. We have a problem in tech that we want to still address in 2024, which is the diversity element. We just ran a research with our Bright Network members, 40,000 students, who've said that they still see tech as the least diverse sector. So, I mean, if we look at the stats, still 26% of women are in tech, 2% Black heritage. There are massive gaps, and actually, that's what's telling us is that, we may not create things that are fit for purpose because it's not representative of the people who are using the tech, right? And I think we need to keep thinking about, diversity brings innovation. And in order to help these businesses while on their digital transformation, they're going to need that dimension, right? So, from a perspective of Technology Academy, we're very keen on making sure that we can bring that diversity through the cohorts of non-technical learners that we are actually, getting ready for that journey. And they come from non-STEM background, but they have that willingness to learn, and they are very interested in contributing to an organization. So I think that's kind of an element that we need to keep in mind, and I think businesses need to really show that they are committed to doing this because it's going to benefit them anyways. And then just kind of my last point here is that, let's be very honest. I think Gen Z are going to be the ones who are going to drive the transformation. They are the ones who are the closest to all the new technologies, AI, and I know we're going to talk about that. But we need to accept, I think, that the next tech revolution is going to come bottom up. And so, as businesses kind of integrate them, they will need to be the voice that we hear and listen to as well. So there's that element as well that I think businesses will have to kind of get on and create that link between junior and more senior resources to continue kind of thriving in this kind of ever-changing environment.
Thanks, Cécile. Some really great points there. Adam, as someone that's kind of working at the coalface of managing some of these digital transformation projects that we're talking about, how far does that conversation that Charlotte and Cécile were just having kind of carry across into the actual conversations that you're having in practice with clients and customers?
No, it's a great question. And I think I'll come back to the point that Cécile made, which is about diversity driving innovation. Because to go quickly, reverse, change direction for organization, which a lot are doing when they're thinking about digital and cloud, that creativity, that co-creation, the collaboration diversity actually supercharges that. And actually the big challenge that a lot of organizations have is they tend to be quite monocultural, never mind looking at things like gender or ethnicity. So actually diversity does drive that diversity of thought, that creativity. And that's something that actually a lot of organizations do really struggle with. Now, within the technical tech organizations, it's even more polarized. So actually, I think building collaboration across the organization and how non-technical parts of the organization come together, and skills retraining is a great example of that, secondments, etc., recognizing that digital needs more than just the technical skills, allows organizations to utilize existing talent to drive that and unlock it. But I think one of the important parts is that what we also see is that when you're doing digital and cloud transformation, there's a part of the organization that are left behind managing legacy. They can be very easily disenfranchised. If you also push diversity agenda as well, that can be a double whammy for them. And I know I might not look as a great person, being kind of male, white, but actually I am disabled. I am also a primary carer. My lived experience gives me so much more that I can bring to the table. And that unlocking in those kind of pools of talent to say, well, actually diversity helps you all take the next step, but also helping them understand that actually diversity isn't just about gender or ethnicity. It's about all of the protected characteristics and lived experiences, and how they draw on that and bring it together is really important. So actually investing in diversity, in accessibility and equity dialogues within workforces will hugely benefit the organization. And that's part of what we help organizations with. It's not just the heavy lifting of transformation. It's all about how you create self-sustaining organizations that underpin that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a really great point that speaks really well to the themes of the Tech Together campaign. The point you made around, for a lot of organizations, one of the biggest challenges is that they're monocultural and that they're all coming at it from a particular set of backgrounds and lived experiences that are very similar. You also raise an interesting point that perhaps I'll pose to Yasmin. How do we, how can firms kind of pursue reforms in this area and tackle some of the problems that Charlotte and Cécile were talking about, whilst, as Adam said, carrying the rest of the organisation with them and ensuring support for and retention of existing staff, and sort of cracking the problem whilst bringing everybody along with you?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, right, isn't it? It's the biggest challenge, I think, is always getting people to come on the journey with you, and explaining why you're going on that journey. And to Adam's point, if you've got a very I guess grown-up organisation and you've been in operation for a long time, you'll have a lot of people who have been there for a long time, and people can be resistant to change. And I think particularly when it's around things that necessarily they might not understand, whether that's technology, whether it's inclusivity, because we're not all the same, are we? So we're going to attack everything a little bit differently from that perspective. So I've worked in lots of different organisations where I've seen different things like this happen. I was at NHS Digital during COVID, now NHS England. So obviously that kind of required to see that go through that digital transformation at that time was just incredible in terms of the way that everything worked. And it was just that, even just seeing the reaction of people when we're all in, I guess, the office for meetings, then switching to Teams, that was huge. That was huge for everybody, right? That was massive. But I think now that obviously I still think there's a bit of, I guess, a post-pandemic hangover, I like to call it, in terms of what's the routine, how do we make sure people are in? And what I think we need to not lose, right, is that value of face-to-face communication and getting things done in the office. I think there can be a nice balance. But I think in order to kind of bring people along that transformation and working in what I guess is the new world, there needs to be, I guess, a focus on, I guess, training and possible retraining of existing employees, making sure that they feel like we're committing to them. harvesting that talent that we've got internally, offering them a range of opportunities, because I think what you'll find, and I guess I think what we've all said at some point, is that there will be a lot of transferable skill sets within your organisation that you can turn around and use, and people will appreciate that, because a lot of people do want to learn and develop and grow. So like, it's how you utilise that in the best possible way. You're not just thinking about new talent, you're thinking about how best to support and develop your existing talent as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that Yasmin has said, and kind of plays on that kind of internal mobility program that I spoke about. But just kind of going the kind of further, you know, we talked about the COVID hang up. Kind of for us, we're really lucky because we have quite a diverse workforce. I think maybe because of where we are, we're based down in Brighton, so there's a lot of different people here. But for us, I think culture as part of that is integral to our business, and that's what makes it success. So kind of from COVID, we saw that, you know, there was a huge drop in kind of the team and the morale and kind of tech together and everyone working together. So we tried to do the very best to encourage people back into the office to work together and be inclusive and kind of join up teams and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we have sales calls coming in from kind of global locations, and you know, we kind of say, right, who can speak this language? And that's what it's all about, is kind of everyone being as one team. Which plays on Adam's part. It's not just tech, it's the whole business that makes it success, but culture is hugely down to that, and that's where kind of it's important to have a diverse workforce.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think people often forget that, you know, the businesses, when we speak of countries and, you know, innovations at a country level, we often speak of the merits of that kind of cultural melting pot. But obviously the businesses has that same dynamic going on in microcosm, right? So that kind of diversity of culture and looking at diversity and inclusion as more than sort of a characteristic box ticking exercise, I think is really fundamental. You both started to bring us on to the next question I wanted to ask. So I'll move on, and perhaps, since you mentioned, Charlotte, that Hyve works with universities, I'll quickly come back to you first, and then we can move on to everyone else. I'm wondering, from Hyve's perspective, kind of where you see gaps in the UK's education and training opportunities, and how well do you think are they aligning with what the cloud industry needs, whether that's managed private cloud or public cloud or whatever, and kind of what changes, if any, would you like to see from either government or schools and colleges or universities that would help businesses like yours and the businesses that come to you as clients?
Yeah, I think it's pretty crazy that you see so much in the news that we're crying out for kind of tech talent within the industry. And kind of working with universities, yeah, there is some talent coming through, but there's not necessarily that interest. And kind of, I don't think there's enough being done from a government level to encourage it on kind of school curriculum. I think there could be more done for kind of discounts to university. I mean, university fees are just crazy money, and even some training programs. I mean, there could be so much done to say, look, this is something that we need within our industry. Give them a discount or free. I mean, for us as a business, it would be great if we could recruit people, say, from school and send them off on courses, but get it for free and kind of discounted and be able to claim stuff back. I mean, surely that is a way that will easily be able to kind of generate interest for people within the industry, because they've not got to pay for the fees that go with it, because it's an expensive thing to learn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that, because I think Charlotte's covered a lot of really great points that I kind of want to expand upon. So I think, and being a school governor, and like when you're actually within a school, you can see that it's things like lack of funding and accessibility for children and technology. It depends where the school is. I think the problem that we face is that I think that journey into technology can sometimes start too late, and I don't actually think it's not the education system, it's, I guess, what's coming from the government and the curriculum and all that kind of stuff. So if I've heard in a lot of different schools, and we do a lot of work with young females in technology that come in from schools. We run our IT's Her Future programme, which focuses on young women in schools. I've started something called Kids Code, which is a free initiative that we run on a Saturday morning, which is free, teaching children of 6 years and above how to code, and their parents can bring them. I don't think it's just the kids, it's getting the parents to understand what roles there are, it's getting the teachers to understand what roles there are and how this translates. But I think part of the problem is I think you need the teachers are, doing an incredible job, that they're doing their best, but they're not technologists to teach actual technology. I think also when you get into that kind of GCSE stage, if your friends aren't going to do something, and I've heard this, not just, I've heard this from, girls that have come in to attend some of our days and they've gone, oh, well, my friends haven't been doing that, so I want to do what my friends do. And it makes it very difficult. So I think the other thing is being mindful that, not all children are going to have access to technology or to iPads and computers at home, and the range of digital literacy amongst adults and digital exclusion across the regions. That's a big thing as well, which I think we need to be addressing so everybody can kind of help that movement on. But I think, we, as part of year 5 and 6 IT, we went in and ran Python on the curriculum for like 5 to 6 weeks. But again, that's not consistent, is it? Like, would I love for us to do that everywhere? Yes. Partly it is our job to do that from a corporate social responsibility perspective, but it's not, it's not our job to make sure that this happens. We can do what we can from a business perspective, but I want to see really big change from an education perspective, because we are going to struggle to have the skills that we need. So it needs to kind of be starting right at primary. And like you say, it's Gen Z and the kids that come after that are going to be the ones that, providing us with that kind of future pipeline of talent. So we need to be putting all of our energy into that. And I just don't think the curriculum serves it well enough right now.
I think that's a really great point around early access to opportunities, access to technology. And I think it speaks to the I in the diversity and inclusion, right? There's this huge sort of social mobility aspect to this. And again, which again speaks to Adam's point around sort of diversity of lived experience and background. Cécile, can I bring you in on this question around kind of how you think the UK's education and training opportunities are kind of aligning with what the tech industry needs, and what changes you'd like to see from government or schools or colleges or universities?
Yeah, so it's in the same kind of wavelength that we are, where it needs to start early. And I think like corporations are doing what they can to kind of bring technology into the schools, and just also from a diversity perspective, giving that view that technology is that it's not just tech, it's a lot more than that. And that's also very important, because when we talk about young girls, like they get turned off thinking that tech is coding, which some of them love, and it's great. We do need to continue to have coders, but at the same time, it's such a broad, field. So I think that, that kind of creating that knowledge and kind of government instilling that, the fact that, technology is broad, like whether you're doing, like you're into, I don't know, design, then you will need technology. You like music, you will need technology. Like, so linking that to real world, I think would be really helpful. And I think we need to also help people understand that there are ways to get into tech, even if they did like a completely different, degree, for example, but they realize this is not what I want to do. And so Technology Academy is actually a free 12-week boot camp, right? We don't charge the trainees who are on that. The idea here is that we give them the skills that they need in order to be able to kickstart that career in tech. But it's about really kind of supporting them alongside that journey. So I think the government also needs to give people these kind of different pathways that can get them into tech. Because to the point I made earlier, I think universities it will be hard to kind of change the entire curriculum to be always up to speed with what's coming, because it just goes too fast. And that means also retraining those teachers, right, in many ways. But I think Yasmin made a really good point that the current teachers, unfortunately, are not equipped. Some of them are actually scared to get into like the deep things, and they need support, right? I've been volunteering at my son's schools, and I'm doing hour of code, which are small things, and it's online, but they don't feel equipped that they can go and do that themselves. So I think we do have all a bit of a responsibility being in the tech world to try to help, because I don't think it's going to come necessarily always from the government to be able to do that, but working together and through what techUK is doing and TechSkill is doing, I think we can definitely make an impact. But it's going to take time, so we just have to be involved, right now already, I think.
Thanks. So I think you raised a really interesting point there around, thinking about tech skills more broadly than just the tech. I mean, when we're talking about adoption of cloud or tech adoption across the economy, we often end up in conversations where we're trying to argue that, look, in the future, every business is going to be a tech business to some extent. And you made a really good point there that, when we're thinking about jobs of the future, almost every skill set is going to have a tech element to it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be, deep tech and coding and AI and whatever. You also raised an interesting point there around kind of the balance between industry and government and schools. Adam, I'm wondering, in the organizations that you're working with, have you seen any really good examples of kind of industry training solutions, industry best practice, and how are the organizations that you're working with kind of managing those challenges that Yasmin and Cécile and Charlotte have highlighted, that we're not getting the right pipeline coming through?
No, it's a really good point about what can industry do, and actually what we see is a huge polarization. Some are trying to get really creative and trying to find out and really kind of stepping up to the challenge. Others are just not recognizing the telltale signs that show that there's a bit of a problem there in skills becoming stale. I mean, the biggest feedback we get from technology organizations who are a critical part of that cloud and digital transformation is that they may have a lot of talent, a lot of people want to develop, but they get no time to do it. It's not incentivized, it's not rewarded. They're just constantly under pressure to deliver. So I think the organizations are doing it really well is they're kind of really incentivizing and encouraging that lifelong learning, but also, for their delivery teams, they recognize actually even in the junior ranks, those are the potential future leaders of their organization of tomorrow. And they're kind of driving, look, you should be spending 10% of your time a year on training, on not just developing new skills, but keeping your current skills fresh. So I think setting targets which are linked in to developing culture is absolutely a best practice that we see, and the ones that aren't doing that are falling behind. I guess the other thing we've touched on a little bit about kind of modern apprenticeships, partnerships, etc. That's really important, and actually giving individuals a route to education, but without the cost, the burden, the ability to earn, explore all at the same time is really important. It's not the only way to do it, because actually there's still a time to good for people to be really effective at the heart of that transformation. But of course, retraining is critical as well. And some of the best organizations we've worked with have developed internal academies so that they've got on tap accessible training, a variety of different formats to match the whatever neurodiversity their workforce may kind of turn up with. And actually that's something now, ironically, through the cloud that's more accessible than ever for organizations. It isn't a huge investment. There's plenty of organizations to partner with. There's online platforms. You can make your own internal academy and drive that. So I think these are the key things that we're seeing about how organizations really pivot their workforce, invest in the right things. But of course, not every organization is investing for the future.
No, and I think that's really key, because it's something, building internal academies has basically been my forte over the last, I don't know, 6-7 years, and I think it has to keep, the investment has to remain the same in terms of how do you take it to the next level. So it's not just about getting the talent through, it's what you then do with them over the course of time they're with you, because you've got to retain them. And I think I think it's really key that you actually establish a learning culture within your organisation. And I think it's really easy to, I mean, I don't know what you're all like in terms of your own learning and development and how good you are at that. I'm very good at saying that everybody else should definitely do it. But I think you know, it's making sure that it's fit for purpose as well, because you might find that a lot of the stuff that's within an organization might not necessarily be, you know, as up to speed as it needs to be. There's a lot of kind of different systems and processes. So I always find it's kind of good to go out and actually speak to people and say, well, you tell me what you want and like what is going to work, because, you know, whilst I'll know some bits and pieces, you know, I think you need to let your people guide you in that respect, because they're the ones doing the work. And I do think that internal academy model is great. Things like technical trainers internally whose sole focus is to bring that skill level up in the organization, but it's not always possible. That's the problem, because priority is making sure that that work keeps coming through. However, if the work keeps coming through and you don't have the skill set to actually produce the work that needs to be doing, so it's a constant battle, isn't it?
Yeah. I will add, oh, sorry, Chris, just wanted to say to your point, Yasmin, about like internal academies and reskilling people. They also need to see what's in it for them to kind of get on that journey, because, you know, you're telling them, okay, you're going to need to learn this new technology, this new stack or something. And then they need to be like, okay, so what does that mean for my future role, right? I think seeing that journey as well is important, and businesses need to kind of think about it like that. Because yeah, you have the abilities within the business, and you want to retain people, so you need to kind of get them onto that journey beyond just like they've learned something new. So how are they going to apply it in the world of work? I think that's also important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Speaking from personal experience, I think when you're presented with a learning opportunity or a training opportunity that you can see how that will help your career advancement, then there's much more buy-in than when it feels like you are responding to a requirement from HR to do a training exercise. I think that's a great point. We're rapidly running out of time, so I just want to move on and talk a little bit about looking beyond the technical skills and knowledge that you need to implement the tech bit of the tech solution. Are there any kind of key issues related to, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about the culture of organizations that you think can hold back digital transformation and cloud adoption, kind of thinking about the broader people and process or the human capital dynamics that make up a cloud transformation and a business transformation strategy? Because ultimately, you know, you can buy the fanciest tech in the world, but if it doesn't actually transform how you're doing your business, then, you know, it's just kind of wasted money. Adam, perhaps can I come to you first on this one?
Yeah, this is a really great point, because I think when I first got into digital consulting, you know, I think we were doing a lot of the heavy lifting, the design, delivery, implementation, partnering, whatever. Actually, now what we're doing in a huge amount is working on that organization, how it works, its operating model, its culture, the tools it uses, etc. And I think one of the realizations that we kind of help organizations come to terms with is that, you know, organizations that's great at operating today doesn't necessarily have the skills on tap to design their new tomorrow. And actually, what does that mean in terms of how do they evolve? And organizations should be master their own their destiny. They know their industry, they know their customers, they know their sector, etc. So they have that intimacy, which is really important in any transformation. But actually, how do you then leverage skills like experimentation, innovation? How do you kind of test hypotheses? How do you do things for the first time you've never done before? How do you set strategy when you don't have the knowledge? So I think for us, a lot of what work we do now and a lot of the skills we've got, such as teams topologies, is helping organizations think about how they work, how they collaborate, and it's how they make decisions, how they invest, how they budget for things, how they set targets, how do they govern it. One of the examples that I use with organizations is that you're in the future, you've got all this digital capability, you're in the cloud, the tools will let you, the minute that developer's done, press commit on something, a bunch of automated test run, it's in the hands of customers. Actually, a team over here actually own the customer experience, and traditionally they're used to a project stopping, waiting for them to inspect what's happening and saying, yeah, we're good, let's give that to the customer. They can't do that anymore. And actually, that causes a lot of problems. And in organizations that don't face up to the challenge of getting everybody organized around the new way of working that cloud and digital enables them, it means that you impair that investment. So instead of being able to continually deliver capability, what you do is you continually stop and wait. And those break points in how you create value for customers and your organization, we're seeing them again and again and again. So for us, that socio-technical engineering in organizations is becoming absolutely crucial to all of our clients, and it's something we're doing more and more.
Thanks, Adam. Some great points there. I just kind of want to throw this question around broader business culture to you, Charlotte, because you mentioned two interesting things earlier. You mentioned the kind of dynamics around how things changed during COVID. And also, I know that Hyve's been going through a bit of a growth spurt recently, branching out internationally, which is great to see. So I'm just wondering kind of how both of those things, which can be quite disruptive to a business, how you're managing that kind of internal sort of cultural change as an organization working in the infrastructure space.
Yeah, I think I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier that the culture is kind of integral to our business success. And we have our recruitment kind of process is quite long, because we want to hire the right people that fit within kind of the business culture, because without us, without kind of the culture and the great kind of workforce, that is our USP. We're a managed hosting provider, so our management and our service is core for our business success, but also the success of our customers. So kind of what has helped us is branching into new regions, because it's opened up our eyes to kind of what else is out there, and to get a wider talent pool, which has been really useful, especially the recent expansion in the US. I mean, it's the talent pool out there is just insane, that there's just tech is the place to be, and that's what I want to see more of kind of within the UK. And I think it is because it's seen as maybe cool, and it's an interesting thing to do, and people out there really do see it as the future. But whereas here, I still don't think people maybe see it as a bit nerdy and kind of not core to kind of the world that we live in, even though it does drive all the kind of digital transformation and success.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, Yasmin, I can see you nodding along there. Do you want to come in this?
Yeah, I just think it goes back to the point that we've all sort of made around transformation. People think transformation and they either start to get scared, or they're like, oh my God, lots of technology, lots of change. But actually, in order for anything to be better, you have to transform, right? Whether that's in tech, whether it's in your career, whether it's in life. So it's kind of, it kind of invokes that element of change. And I do think that one of the things that we kind of focused on, and I went to Leeds City College a couple of years ago, and we were talking to teachers about how they could present roles in technology to their students. And actually the theme that we focused on was digital. So there is a role in technology for everybody. What we're not saying is that we want to exclude people from, it's meant to feel inclusive, but I think the fact is it doesn't, because there are so many barriers to coming into these type of roles. So it goes back to the point that whatever you do, wherever you go, whether you're at the hairdressers, there'll be some kind of technology that enables you to pay for your purchase. When you're buying a birthday card online, you can do that so you don't have to go into a shop. So actually everything that we do, whether people realize it or not, it has transformed, and it has grown. So there are going to be, in any role that you do, wherever that is, you are going to have to interact with technology. And I think probably the biggest bit of transformation from my perspective, not just in organisations, but I think in the UK in general, is like, how do we make sure that everybody has a good standard of digital literacy? But that goes back to things like digital exclusion and how people have access to certain things. Like there's pockets of the community within our region that I don't think have access to phones. And obviously the NHS app is all kind of, if you can't use that. And I think of my grandparents, and I think they don't even know how to use their mobile phones. That's a pain in itself, and it's kind of bringing people up to speed. And also it's facing that resistance for transformation. Like some people don't want to know, but it's kind of getting to the point where, in order for things to move, you have to grow. It's the same with anything. So I think that's like a really big challenge in general, and will be definitely reflected in organisations, but also in our everyday lives as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we're rapidly running out of time, but I feel like, as ever with these webinars, I feel like we've just opened up a whole bunch of important topics that we need to unpack throughout the year. So perhaps I have to schedule more of these. Before we end, I just want to ask you all kind of a closing question. And perhaps Adam, I'll come to you first on this one. What piece of, like, if you could, going back to kind of basic fundamentals, what kind of key piece of advice would you give to business leaders contemplating a digital transformation project, or wanting to go through a cloud modernization project, but put off by lack of skills in the organization, or finding it difficult to implement, a diverse and inclusive workplace, or any of these kind of key challenges that we've discussed today? Where should they start from?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. I think there are probably two key things that I typically discuss, engage, advise on. I think the first one is very much about seek partnerships. There's a lot of people already been through this, have had the scars, the experience, etc. Engage with them freely, but in the way that you want to. It's got to meet your needs and how you work, but seek partnerships to help you set out what that ambition looks like and what your journey might look like and get started. The second piece of advice I would give is that actually the traditional way of investing in technology, 5-year program, fixed budget, fixed plan, it doesn't work, because in year 2, actually the technology's changed again and there's new opportunities and they'll let you do it quicker. So actually the other thing is about developing that cultural bravery, about that way that you can kind of set out measures that help guide that, but don't lock it in place, so that you can iteratively build out and invest within cloud and technology. And that's a fundamentally different way that organizations typically invest in what is a fundamental change or an infrastructural investment for the organization. So yeah, I think that not trying to seek everything being locked down right from the outset is really important, but building a framework that gives them the confidence that they're going in the right direction from the outset is really important. And again, that's something that good partnerships, whether it's a supplier or indeed it's a competitor organization or peer organization that's been through this as well.
Thanks, Adam. Slightly different closing question for you, Charlotte, because I suspect the answer to what key piece of advice would be find a good managed service provider. So I'm going to slightly modify the question and ask, when they come to you and they say, we want to undergo this digital transformation process, what kind of questions would you be asking them about, what kind of skills base they have in-house, what kind of organizational approach they're taking to it? What would you ask them once they've already come to you?
I think the key is understanding kind of where they are within the project. I mean, for me, I try and say now that digital transformation isn't a project. It's an ever-evolving beast, and I don't think it's not start or an end. So I think it's making people aware of that it's not a tick box. And for me, kind of, don't rush into it. You've got to ensure that actually what your outcomes, what do you want to do? Do you want to save money? Do you want to scale your resources? Do you want to kind of expand into global locations? But what do you want beyond that? You kind of almost got to look beyond the project and kind of what's next after that, because it's always going to change and there's always going to be something new that comes into play. So yeah, for me, it's kind of, look, don't rush into it because your costs are going to go through the roof, but kind of what's next after that? It's not a one and done thing, and it's making them aware of that it's never going to end.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and applies particularly well to the cloud space. That kind of, it's an ongoing cyclical process. This isn't a tick box exercise. And then finally, and perhaps coming at this more from a kind of skills and talent, holding back the business perspective, Yasmin, and then perhaps Cécile, you can close. What key piece of advice would you give to business leaders wanting to undergo a cloud modernization project, don't have the skills in-house, being held back? Where do they start?
With their existing people, or like utilize your existing talent and retrain, upskill, whatever you can do, because sometimes I don't think the answer is going to search in the external marketplace, because it's not there either. So think about what talent that you've got. How can you develop them? How can you, I guess, carve different pathways out for them? What transferable skills have you already got, and focus on that. And then that in turn, I think, gives you back some investment from your people. And enables people to kind of do that squiggly career thing that everybody speaks about so much. And, career changing can be really fulfilling as well. And I think it's something that we need to really capitalise on in quite a tough marketplace. So that would be my advice.
Thanks, Yasmin. Great point. And then Cécile, finally.
Yes, I would say if you do have to go externally to find your talent, then I would say really consider non-traditional pathways. People coming from a different background than maybe not having studied tech, but coming out of a boot camp or having done upskilling themselves, and also because it will help you bring the point we made earlier, the diversity element. So as a business, it helps you address, I guess, two things: the digital skills gap in your team, but also the diversity of your team. And you're giving the next generation a chance to get into tech and kind of start their career. So I think those elements to me will be important to keep in mind.
Thanks, Cécile. Some great points. Sadly, we're out of time. I think it's been a really interesting conversation. So huge thanks to the panel for joining me this morning. Thanks to those of you who joined on the call. If you're watching this as a webinar, please do click the link below, check out the Tech Together campaign hub. There's a huge amount of really great content on there about building diverse and inclusive workplaces. And as we've been discussing today, getting access to the broadest possible talent base for your organization. So once again, huge thanks to the panel, and I'll see you all again soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.